I want you to try something for me right now. Wherever you are, whether you're doing the dishes or walking the dog, I want you to just close your eyes for a second.
Though obviously, please keep them open if you're driving.
Right, yeah, keep one eye on the road. But mentally, just mentally, strip everything away. Take away the car, take away the road, take away the earth entirely, the stars. Just take away the black, empty space between the stars.
You want to go back to the absolute 0 point, the moment, right before the moment.
Exactly. And in that void, I want you to listen. Because the source material we're diving into today asks us to hear something very, very specific. And at first, it's not a sound we even recognize. It's like a pressure, this vast cosmic tension. And then there's a whisper.
A whisper that very quickly becomes a roar.
A massive, rapid expansion, chaos, just intense heat. A sound so unbelievably loud and violent that it basically registers as silence because, well, there are no ears to hear it yet. So the Big Bang, the sound of absolutely everything rushing outward, colliding, smashing, burning.
And yet, if you keep listening, if you push past the explosion, past the cooling plasma, past the formation of those very first hydrogen atoms, you begin to hear something else underneath all that chaos.
Right, you hear this rhythm.
A mechanical hum.
Yeah, like a click whir, something organizing itself right out of the static, something that sounds a lot less like a random explosion and much more like a code.
And that is the sound of universal logic. That specific tension between the chaotic, violent explosion and the rhythmic, steady hum, that is exactly where we are living today.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today I am stepping into the role of the empiricist. I am playing the skeptic today, the guy who looks at the engine and just wants to know exactly how the pistons fire. I mean, I don't really care about the soul of the car. I want to know about the combustion ratio.
And I'm here to look at the blueprints, to ask why the car was built in the very first place and who decided on the destination. I will be taking on the role of the rationalist today.
We're tackling a stack of research today that is, frankly, it's heavy. It is dense, it's highly controversial, and it's absolutely fascinating. We are looking at the work of J.R. Ahmed, specifically his text, Divine Mechanism, Evolution in the Quranic Paradigm.
And right away, before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another shouting match between science and religion, let me stop you.
Please stop us, because we have all heard that debate. It's exhausted. It's usually just two people screaming past each other in a TV studio. One side is yelling about the fossil record, and the other side is screaming heresy, and nobody learns a single thing.
This deep dive is not that. This is not a collision. It is an architectural tour.
An architectural tour. I actually really like that.
Because usually when we talk about evolution and faith, we view them as these massive tectonic plates crashing into each other. You get earthquakes, volcanoes, total destruction. On one side, you have the materialist view, this rigorous, cold, deeply fascinating world of undirected mechanisms, the world where we are essentially just happy accidents of chemistry.
And on the other side, you often get this very rigid religious narrative that just flat out refuses to look at the data. But Ahmed's work is totally different. It's this wild attempt to reconcile these two narratives. He argues that the materialist mechanism, meaning evolution, natural selection, all that messy biological business, it isn't an enemy of the divine.
In fact, he argues it is the creator's song.
The creator's song, which is a beautiful phrase, right? But is it actually true? Or is it just poetry to make us feel a little better about being upright monkeys? That is our mission today. We are going to see if we can synthesize the how of science, that patient, rigorous art of observation, with the why of faith.
And for you, listening right now, we have a challenge.
A really big challenge.
We want you to suspend the urge to pick a team. Do not choose the laboratory or the mosque just yet. We want you to watch how these two seemingly opposed realities might actually be the exact same building, just viewed from very different elevations.
So let's get right into the friction. Because we have to start with the noise. We have to start with the problem. The source material refers to the evolutionary argument as a piercing cry.
A piercing cry. It is a very visceral image.
It is. And honestly, it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, historically, the theory of evolution wasn't just some neat scientific discovery. It was a siren. It was a massive wake-up call that completely shattered a very old, very comfortable dream. It cuts right through the old stories we used to tell ourselves about how we got here.
It fundamentally challenges the traditional, literalist, religious conception of human origins. It is the loudest voice in the room for a very good reason.
Right. So I am putting on my lab coat now. I'm adjusting my safety goggles, and I'm sitting firmly in the empiricist's chair. When I look at the world through the lens of Darwin, through modern genetics, through paleontology, I hear a very specific whistle. It's low, it's constant, and it says one thing very, very clearly.
What does it say to you?
It says you don't need a boss.
Ah, the argument for a superfluous creator.
Exactly. Superfluous, unnecessary, extra baggage. Let's use an analogy. If I can explain to you exactly how a car engine works, how the spark plugs ignite the fuel, how the pistons drive the crankshaft, how the transmission sends torque to the wheels, and I can show you that it runs on a completely self-sustaining loop of physics and chemistry, do I really need to believe there is a tiny, invisible gremlin under the hood pushing the pedals?
No, you don't. The mechanism explains itself.
That is the immense strength of the evolutionary argument. It is incredibly robust. It doesn't need magic. The source describes it as life's grand unfolding, and it is built on two very, very simple things.
Mutation and selection.
Mutation and selection. Let's break that down for a second. Mutation is basically a genetic tremor. It's a mistake. A glitch in the copy machine. You have a strand of DNA, and when it copies itself to make a new cell or a new organism, sometimes it slips. It types an A instead of a T.
And usually that typo is detrimental.
Usually, yeah, it breaks the machine, the cell dies, the organism doesn't survive. But every once in a blue moon, that typo does something interesting. It makes the bone slightly denser, or it makes the muscle twitch slightly faster. It makes the eye just slightly more sensitive to light.
And then comes the selector.
Nature's steady hand. The Grim Reaper, really. Nature looks at that typo and says, okay, this glitch kills you, you're out. But this other glitch, this glitch helps you run away from the lion a fraction of a second faster. You stay. You get to have babies.
And the crucial element there, the canvas it all happens on, is time.
Deep, deep time. We are not talking about weekends here. We aren't talking about centuries. We are talking about millions upon millions of years. Over that immense scale, those tiny, helpful glitches stack up, one on top of the other, from a single cell floating in some primordial soup to the complex, neurotic, deep-dive listening humans we are today. The chain is continuous. It is completely unbroken.
And that continuity is the absolute key for the empiricist.
It is. Because I don't need a wizard to zap a monkey into a man. I just need time and death. That's it. Time and death create complexity.
This brings us directly to the God of the gaps concept, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is the heavy artillery of the empiricist mindset. Historically, humans use God to explain the stuff they just didn't get. It was a placeholder for ignorance.
Why does the thunder crash?
God is bowling, or God is shouting.
Why did the crops fail?
God is angry. We didn't sacrifice enough goats this year.
Why did that guy get sick?
God is punishing him for his sins. But then science comes along. The source calls science the bright sun, and it starts to light up those dark corners.
And when the light hits the corner, the mystery evaporates.
Completely. We know why the thunder crashes now. It's atmospheric pressure and electricity. We know why the crops failed. It's a blight, a fungus, or a drought caused by El Nino. We know why you got sick. It's a virus or a bacteria. Yeah. Every time we learn how the mechanism actually works, the gap where God supposedly lives gets smaller.
It shrinks.
It shrinks to nothing. In the biological realm, the last great mystery was, how did we get here? If natural forces entirely explain the how of our complexity, the creator becomes an unnecessary hypothesis. It's Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the right one. And it happened naturally is a lot simpler than an invisible deity molded it out of nothing.
It is a very compelling argument. It appeals to our profound desire for logic and causality. But the empiricist argument goes deeper than just redundancy, doesn't it? The source material points to the nature of the design itself, the imperfections.
Yes, this is the part that I find really damning if we were talking about an intelligent designer. Because if I hired an architect to build me a house and he put the toilet in the kitchen and made the stairs lead straight into a blank wall, I would fire him.
You would rightfully call him incompetent.
I would. And if this world were designed by an all-powerful, all-knowing engineer, frankly, I'd like to speak to the manager. Because there are flaws. There are serious glaring bugs in the code.
You are referring to the tinkering nature of evolution.
Exactly. The source calls it a winding line. It is not a straight path of perfect engineering. It's a process of patching things together with whatever is lying around. We have vestigial organs, parts we don't even need anymore but are still hanging around like clutter in a garage.
Like the appendix.
The appendix is the classic example. It's basically a ticking time bomb in your gut that does very little for you. Or wisdom teeth. Why do we have teeth that literally do not fit in our heads? Why do we have to pay a dentist to rip them out of our skulls? because our jaws got smaller as our brains got bigger, but our genetics haven't caught up yet.
It implies a history.
It implies a very messy history. But my absolute favorite example, and the source brings this up, is the laryngeal nerve, specifically in the giraffe.
Ah, the recurrent laryngeal nerve.
Right. So this nerve connects the brain to the larynx, the voice box. In a fish, this is a straight shot, brain to gills. Super simple, very efficient. But as animals evolved, we grew necks. The heart moved further down in the chest cavity, and because evolution can't just cut a wire and splice it back together, the nerve got dragged down with the heart.
So in a giraffe.
In a giraffe, this nerve goes from the brain all the way down that massive long neck, loops around a major artery near the heart, and then goes all the way back up the neck to the larynx. It is a detour of 15 feet.
That is hardly efficient engineering.
It's ridiculous engineering. A first-year engineering student would route that wire directly. Evolution routed it that way because the giraffe evolved from a fish-like ancestor where that path made sense, and it just got stretched out over millions of years. It proves blind history. It proves that we are the result of good enough survival strategies, not a deliberate instant fabrication.
And that leads to the biggest blow to the human ego.
The dethroning of humanity.
The blow to anthropocentrism.
We aren't sitting on a special sacred throne. We act like we are the main character of the universe.
Yeah.
But evolution looks at us and says, nah, you're just a hairless ape with anxiety and a smartphone. We are kin to the rap. We are kin to the lettuce. We are kin to the bacteria living in our own guts.
We share a common ancestry with all of it.
We do. The literal narratives of ancient castles, the idea that humans were dropped here fully formed, completely separate from the animals, that falls apart. Deep time contradicts the sudden poof of creation. So if you are sitting in the empiricist's chair, the world looks like a vast, undirected machine. It's impressive, sure, it's huge, but it's lonely.
Yeah.
And it is running entirely on autopilot. There is no one flying the plane.
It is a formidable narrative. It is logically consistent, and it is backed by mountains of empirical data. I'm not here to tell you the data is wrong.
You're not. Because usually, this is the part where the religious guy says the carbon dating is a lie.
No. That is a fundamentally weak defense.
Right.
If I tried to argue against the fossil record, I would be fighting reality. The rocks do not lie. The DNA does not lie. But here's where it gets fascinating. Here is where we are going to switch chairs.
Okay. I am taking off the lab coat. I'm moving over. I am sitting in the rationalist chair now. The lighting is a bit dimmer. It's quieter. What do I see from here?
You see the exact same data. You see the mutations. You see the selection. You see the giraffe's convoluted nerve. But the background noise changes. The source material asks us to listen to the rationalist's resonance. In this view, those glitches, those tremors, those imperfections, they aren't errors, they are ayat.
Ayat, that's the Arabic word for signs, right?
Yes, but it implies much more than just a street signpost like stop or yield. It implies a symbol, a profound message. The Quranic perspective, as J.R. Ahmed outlines in the text, frames the natural world not as a blind machine running on autopilot, but as a book to be read.
A book. So the physical world itself is a text.
A manuscript written in matter. Think about verse 10.6. It talks about the alternation of day and night as signs for those who reflect. The argument here is that the Quran doesn't just tolerate science, it demands it. It urges the rigorous study of the cosmos. It wants you to look at the dinosaur bones. It wants you to decode the DNA helix.
Why? Just to test your faith with tricky fossils?
No, to find the author. Because that dynamic orders dance isn't a replacement for God. It is the signature.
So wait, when the empiricist says evolution explains it so we don't meet God, the rationalist says what?
The rationalist says evolution is the pen.
The pen.
It is the majestic measured means. This is the crucial distinction in the source material. Evolution is not the alternative to God. It is the method of God.
The method.
The God of the gaps fallacy only works if you think God only lives in the magic tricks. If you think God only shows up when the laws of physics break down. If you think God is only present when a miracle happens that science cannot explain.
But you're saying?
I am saying that if the laws of physics themselves, if the very capacity for matter to organize, if the very ability for a mutation to occur, if the thermodynamics that allow the sun to burn, if that entire process is the act of creation, then the gap doesn't exist. The whole thing is the act.
Okay, let's go back to the car analogy then. Because the empiricist said the car drives itself, so I don't need a driver.
Let's update the analogy. Think about a self-driving car. A highly advanced autonomous vehicle. It navigates a complex, chaotic city. It stops at red lights. It avoids unpredictable pedestrians. It calculates the optimal route to get you home. It is making thousands of independent decisions every single second.
Right, it's running on an incredibly complex algorithm.
Now, does the fact that the car drives itself mean there was no software engineer?
No.
Yeah.
It means the engineer was really, really smart.
Exactly. It means the engineer was brilliant enough to build a system that can adapt to the chaos of the road without needing constant manual input.
I see where you're going with this.
Which is more impressive? A god who has to constantly reach down and mold every single bird out of clay by hand like a potter. A god who has to constantly intervene to keep the planets from crashing into each other. Or a sovereign intelligence that creates a system, a unified set of laws, constants, and biological imperatives that naturally, over billions of years, produces the bird.
The second one definitely implies a much higher level of engineering, a fully self-sustaining system.
Exactly. The capacity for the universe to generate life is baked into the recipe of the Big Bang. The superfluous creator argument fails because it assumes the creator has to be a micromanager. But the Quranic creator is a sovereign architect.
Okay, I see the pivot. It's clever. It reframes the mechanism from accident to automation. But I still have a snag here, a pretty big one.
The randomness.
The randomness. Evolution fundamentally relies on random mutation. A cosmic roll of the dice, a stray radiation particle hits a DNA strand, and bam, change happens. How do you square random accident with divine plan? Those two things are literal opposites. If I roll dice, I don't have a plan, I just have chaos.
This brings us to a beautiful concept called biquadar.
Biquadar. Why does that mean?
It translates roughly to due measure or proportion. The source cites verse 54.49, "We have created all things in due measure and proportion."
But random means no measure. It means whatever happens, happens.
To us, yes. To the empiricist, a genetic mutation is a tremor, a random mistake in the code. But in the Quranic paradigm, that tremor is a flickering design. What looks like a random roll of the dice to a limited human observer is, in this overarching view, a self-executing divine code.
That is a heavy concept. A self-executing divine code.
Think about computer programming. Think about procedural generation.
Like in video games, where the computer builds the world dynamically as you walk through it.
Exactly. A programmer writes a code that deliberately uses randomness to create terrain or levels or complex solutions. The randomness isn't a mistake in the code. It is a tool of the code. It allows the system to explore vast possibilities that a rigid, linear script could never achieve.
So the randomness is what allows for adaptation.
Precisely. If God created a perfectly static world where animals were fixed and unchanging, what happens when an ice age hits?
They all die, they freeze.
They all die. But if you create a system that can change, that uses mutation and selection to dynamically adapt to the cold, then life survives. Evolution is the due measure of flexibility programmed into life itself. It is the ultimate safety valve.
So the continuity of nature, the very fact that it runs on its own, isn't an accident. It's the feature.
It is divine precision masked as natural selection. The source argues that the laws of nature are meticulously spun. They are true. They are direct manifestations of wisdom. So when we see a brutal struggle for survival, the rationalist sees the methodology of the artist using the tool of entropy to forge order.
This changes the perception of time too, doesn't it? Because that is the other big conflict people have. The Bible, the Quran, traditional readings of these texts often give you this intense sense of immediacy. God spoke and it was. Let there be light, and click, the lights came on instantly.
But science says, no, it took 4.5 billion years just to get to the boring stuff on Earth.
Exactly. We have the 7 days or 6 days narratives, and then we have deep time. How do you reconcile those two entirely different scales?
This is one of the most structurally elegant sections of the source material. We call it the architecture of time. We have to talk about the relativity of the command.
Okay, let's unpack that. The source points to verse 54.50.
And our command is but a single word, like the twinkling of an eye.
Twinkling of an eye, lam al-basar. That sounds like instant magic to me. That sounds like poof.
It does sound like that. But compare that to the observable reality of geological time. Millions of years of slow, grinding stone and shifting tectonic plates. How do you reconcile twinkling of an eye with the Jurassic period?
Right, it feels like a direct contradiction. Either it was instant or it was agonizingly slow. It can't be both.
Unless you understand the fundamental difference between the command and the execution.
The software launch and the runtime.
Exactly. The source uses this synthesis. The Arabic concept of kun, which means be, is the software launch. It is the pure intent. It happens entirely outside of time. It is instantaneous be. The will is set. The parameters are locked. The enter key is pressed.
But the result?
The result is the program running inside our dimension of time. So to the creator, who exists outside of time, the intent is a single timeless flash. The alpha and the omega are one. But to us, living inside the simulation, living inside the echo of that flash, it looks like billions of years of struggle and adaptation and evolution.
Whoa, that is actually a really profound way to look at it. It's literally relativity.
It is relativity. Time is a dimension of the created universe. It is not a constraint on the creator.
So the slow unfolding of life isn't a lack of power. It's not God struggling to get the clay to stick together right. It's just how the command looks from the inside of the timeline.
Precisely. It explains the discrepancy without denying a single shred of the science. And the source backs this up by looking at how the Quran actually describes development. It is almost never static. Look at the verses regarding human origins, specifically 6.98 and 22.5.
Yeah, I have those notes right here. It actually breaks it down into stages. It says dust, then a sperm drop, then a clot, then a lump of flesh, then an infant, then strength, then decrepit age.
It is a flowchart.
It is. It's a biological process map.
And that is the aha moment the source wants us to have. The text explicitly describes creation as a process involving distinct stages and gradualism. It is not a static poof. It is a journey from one state of matter to another.
So if you apply that logic,
yeah,
that creation is fundamentally a process of stages to the whole species, not just the individual embryo.
Then theistic evolution becomes not just compatible, but highly intuitive. The text supports a continuum of being. It supports the idea that things start incredibly simple, as dust, minerals, drops, and become complex through a guided unfolding.
This is starting to really make sense in a modern context. It feels very compatible. But here is where the source material completely threw me a curveball, a massive one.
I think I know what you're going to say.
I assumed this whole framework was a modern attempt to retrofit religion to fit Darwin. You know the drill. Science discovers something undeniable, like the Earth is round or the Earth revolves around the sun or evolution. And then religious apologists scramble to find a vague verse that sounds kind of like it, just so they can say, see, we knew it all along.
The retroactive fit. It is a very common criticism.
Right. It feels convenient. It feels a little desperate. But then I got to section 4 of our outline, deep history. And I was reading it like, wait, what?
Ah, yes. The Mohammedan theory of evolution.
Yeah, this blew my mind. We are talking about 1874 here. John William Draper. Who is this guy?
Draper was a very influential scientist, chemist, and historian in the 19th century. He was actually the first president of the American Chemical Society. He wrote a famous book called History of the Conflict Between Religion and Science.
So he was actively looking for conflict.
He was a provocateur. He wanted to show how religious institutions, primarily the Catholic Church, had stifled scientific progress. He was writing right in the absolute heat of the Darwinian debates. But in doing so, he dropped this fascinating historical reference. He explicitly mentions the Mohammedan theory of evolution.
Mohammedan being an archaic, slightly Orientalist term for Islamic.
Correct. But look at what he is acknowledging. He was pointing out that evolutionary ideas, the core idea that life changes and adapts over time, were not invented in 1859 by Charles Darwin. They were present and debated in the Islamic Golden Age centuries earlier.
This is the part that I think most people just do not know. I certainly didn't. We are taught that before Darwin, everyone on Earth thought the world was exactly 6,000 years old and perfectly static. We were taught that everyone believed species were fixed permanently. But we were talking about pre-Darwinian scholars, ancient minds. Who exactly are these guys?
Let's start with Al-Jahiz, 9th century, Basra, Iraq.
9th century, that is a full 1,000 years before Darwin stepped onto the Beagle.
1,000 years. He wrote a massive encyclopedia called Kitab al-Hayawan, the Book of Animals. And in that book, he directly discusses the struggle for existence.
That is literally Darwin's phrasing.
It is the core conceptual engine of evolution. Al-Jahiz observed that animals actively struggle for food, for territory, and against being eaten. He didn't just catalog them like stamps, he watched how they interacted. He talked about how environmental factors fundamentally influence species. He noticed that animals in different environments develop different physical traits to survive.
That sounds suspiciously like natural selection.
It is the absolute germ of the idea. It's the observation that life is plastic, not static. Then you have later scholars like Ibn Miskawayh and al-Biruni. They talked at length about the progression of life. Al-Biruni even observed that nature seems to preserve the fittest, noting that stronger individuals survive and breed while the weak perish.
Okay, so the seeds of the theory were definitely there, but the one that really stood out to me in the source, the one that actually made me put the paper down and just stare at the wall, was Ibn Khaldun.
The sociologists.
The father of sociology, yes. In the Muqaddimah, written in the 14th century, 1377 to be precise, he lays out a continuum of being that is startlingly specific.
Read the quote. It is definitely worth hearing in full.
Okay, I have it right here. He traces the progression of creation. He says, the world of creation started from minerals and progressed in an ingenious, gradual manner to plants and animals. Okay, standard stuff so far. But then he says the last stage of minerals is connected with the first stage of plants, such as herbs and seedless plants. The last stage of plants is connected with the first stage of animals, such as snails and shellfish.
Notice how he sees the links, the transitional borders.
But then, and this is the real kicker, he says, the animal world then widens, its species become numerous, and in a gradual process of creation, it finally leads to man, who is able to think and reflect.
Oh, and read the next part.
The higher stage of man is reached from the world of monkeys, in which both sagacity and perception are found, but which has not reached the stage of actual reflection and thinking. At this point, we come to the first stage of man.
The world of monkeys.
He actually wrote that. In the 1300s, man is reached from the world of monkeys.
He did. He saw a ladder, a continuous ramp, minerals to plants, to animals, to primates, to humans. He didn't see impenetrable walls between them. He saw connections. He saw a flow of life.
That is wild to me. Because today, if you say humans came from monkeys in some religious circles, you get kicked out of the room. It is treated as the ultimate insult to divine creation. But here is a giant of Islamic scholarship, a man revered by historians East and West, basically saying, yeah, look at the monkeys. That's the obvious step right before us.
It creates a very different historical picture of the relationship between faith and science, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful here. The rationalist in me, or the empiricist, I guess, needs to ask the obvious question. Did Darwin read Ibn Khaldun? Did he have a translated copy of the Muqaddimah on his ship?
Almost certainly not. And the source is very careful to clarify this nuance. There's absolutely no evidence of direct influence. Darwin was working within a completely different scientific tradition, building primarily on modern geology and Malthusian economics. But the point isn't about plagiarism.
It's about precedence.
It's about the intellectual climate. The point is that looking at life as an evolving, adaptive continuum was never historically alien to Islamic thought. The perceived conflict, the rigid idea that religion must say fixity and science must say change, is largely a Western construct that got superimposed on Islamic history later on.
So for a Muslim scholar in the 14th century, seeing a biological continuum from mineral to monkey to man wasn't heresy. It was just observation.
It was observing the ayat. It was seeing the profound unity of creation. If God is strictly one, then his creation should logically be one continuous, deeply connected masterpiece, not a disjointed collection of separate toys.
Which brings us back to the really big picture, the cosmic origins. Because if we zoom out from the monkey and the man and go all the way back to the beginning, the absolute real beginning, we find that exact same synthesis.
The Big Bang's whisper.
We're back to the sound design from the intro. Back to that hum. The source points to verse 21.30. Do not the disbelievers see that the heavens and earth used to be one solid mass, and we exploded them asunder?
Exploded them asunder. The Arabic is ratkan fafatakahuma. It literally refers to tearing apart something that was previously stitched together into one piece. It's an incredibly violent, dynamic physical image.
And then the verse immediately says, and out of water we made every living thing.
It connects the macrocosmic expansion directly to the microbiological origin. It ties the stars to the cells. The hydrogen created in the furnace of the Big Bang eventually becomes the water, which eventually becomes the primordial soup, which eventually becomes the living cell.
And this is where the core concept of Tawhid comes in.
Tawhid, the oneness, the unifying principle. This is the absolute core of the Islamic paradigm. It means there is no random sway in the universe. There are no two rival powers fighting for control. There is no nature versus God.
Nature is the expression of God.
Exactly. The universe is a single, unified system. Gravity, natural selection, thermodynamics, quantum mechanics, these are not competitors to the divine. They are the physical manifestations of divine wisdom. They are what scholars call the sunnah of Allah, the habits of God.
So when people ask the question, is it evolution or is it God?
The source suggests that is a fundamental category error. It is like asking, is this painting made by the brush or by the painter?
Right. Is the building held up by gravity or by the architect?
The empiricist's concession, and this is very important, is that science beautifully reveals the how. It reveals the rigorous art. It tells us all about the mechanics, the vast timescales, the blood, the bone. It tells us that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. It tells us that we share 98% of our DNA with a chimpanzee.
And that mechanism is beautiful in its own terrifying, massive way.
And the rationalist's conclusion is that faith discerns the why. It feels the intent. It hears the pulsing heart behind those cold mechanics. It tells you why there is a universe at all instead of just nothing. It tells you why the chimp eventually became a conscious observer capable of wondering about its own existence. It tells you that the struggle for survival is merely the method, but the divine will is the author.
They are completely complementary. They are two eyes.
If you close one, you lose your depth perception. If you use both, you suddenly see the sculpture in 3 dimensions.
So we've traveled from the piercing cry of atheism, that lonely, cold whistle of the empty machine, to the melody of creation found in theistic evolution.
We have seen that the laws of nature are not walls locking a creator out of the universe. They are the intricate threads meticulously spun by the ultimate source.
So what does this all mean for us? For the listener driving to work right now, or doing the dishes, or just staring up at the ceiling?
It means we can finally stop being so afraid of information.
Say more about that.
If you are a person of faith, you do not need to fear the fossil record. You do not need to fear the genetic similarity between you and a chimp. Those things aren't threats to your belief. They are details of your incredible family history. They are the very signs you are supposed to be reading.
And if you are a person of science?
If you are a person of science, it invites you to consider that the sheer elegance of the mechanism, the fact that this highly chaotic universe somehow organized itself into a mind that can think about the universe, might suggest a source code. It might suggest that the universal logic isn't just cold, dead math. It might be a song.
It's a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It is a bridge between the piercing cry of atheism and the melody of creation.
The laws of nature are meticulously spun reflections of the ultimate source.
You know, there is this final thought in the source material that I just cannot stop thinking about. It's the provocative thought we promised to leave you, the listener, with today.
The concept of the echo.
The echo. We talked earlier about how the command, be, is timeless. It's like the twinkling of an eye. But we experience it as billions of years of history.
Yes.
So here's the question. If the word is truly outside of time, and the command has already been given,
then the universe, from start to finish, is technically already completed.
and all of this struggle, all of this biological evolution, all of human history, even this deep dive we're doing right now,
It's just the reverberation. We are living inside the echo of a command that has already been fulfilled.
are we just the ripples of a stone that was thrown into the pond before time even began?
And if so, then evolution isn't just a blind biological process. It is the literal sound wave of God's voice, traveling slowly through the medium of matter.
And we're all just finally learning how to listen to it.
Just learning to listen.
That is a lot to chew on. We're going to leave you right there in the echo.
Keep listening.
This has been The Deep Dive. Catch you on the next wave.